So find a comfortable seat. Take a time, take a few moments here to really try to make it comfortable, to move your sitting bones back and apart. Please be on something like a blanket or a block, something folded that lifts you up. Wiggle your shoulders a little bit. You can polish your ribs a little bit, going both directions. Just take a moment to just kind of wiggle a little. Here's where you can fidget. I'm going to let you fidget as much as you need to for a few moments until you kind of get into that place of moving the stickiness out and feeling a little more comfortable. I often there's what I call a kinesthetic rocking. Sometimes I'll do in a pose if I feel like I can't get comfortable, and sometimes that'll shake up what's sticky. All right, and then as you're ready, come to stillness and begin your steady breath practice. So we breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. And we begin to take the breath and make it as sweet tasting and as smooth as we can. And we lengthen it. So if we start with a 4 count, maybe after a few breaths, we work towards a 5 count. But there's no pressure. There's no pressure to get anywhere. In fact, because our theme is patience today, we're taking the opposite. We're taking that idea that all things are impermanent, all things change, and eventually you will too. And so if we look at the long term, if it's your yoga practice that you're impatient with or a particular pose, back off on it, get sweeter and steadier with it, and in a year it'll be different, I promise you. I see it all the time, and I always wish with people that I had before and after pictures, because so many of you I've worked with for so long, and I love to see the shifts and the changes over time. With steady devotion and steady attention and showing up on the mat, things shift and change, just like in our lives. We show up, we pay attention to details. We look where it's good to look, where it's healing to look. We focus our gaze and we breathe steadily. So from here, you're just going to let your hands glide up to your rib cage so that your hands are on either side. And I want you to send your 4 count breath right into those ribs, seeing if you can inflate front, back, left, and right. And as you exhale, just watch the ribs falling and settling back down. They're like those old-fashioned bellows that we used to use for the fireplace. Inhaling, feeling those ribs inflate. Exhaling, letting them deflate. And now move your gaze, your drishti. Your eyes are soft or closed. Your drishti goes to your third eye point. And you continue that breath practice, just feeling those ribs inflate and ribs deflate. Try to keep the eyes steady as best you can. And let the eyes also settle back towards the back of the skull. So the front of the skull, when the eyes move forward, that's pitta, that's fire, and that's alertness. And that's also a little bit of fear, looking around and trying to see what's next. So when you keep your eyes steady and soft in the back of the head, it begins to move you into the rest and digest mode, where the parasympathetic system can be higher on the totem pole than the sympathetic. That's the rest and digest is the parasympathetic. So we want to bring that to the fore right now. We're going to finish up that with an exhale, and then you're going to relieve your hands and rest them on your lap, but continue with your 4 count breath. And then you're going to hold the breath for 7 counts. You'll exhale for 8, and you'll inhale for 4. You're whole for 7. Exhale for 8. In for 4. Hold for 7. X 8. Keep going just like that. Inhale for 4. Hold 7. X 8. Continue. Note where your drishti is. See if you can keep it steady and still. One more round. On your next inhale, just fly your arms up overhead till your arms are extending out from the roots of your shoulders. Feel the roots of your thigh bones and feel those relaxing down through your feet. Stack your throat center, that's your expressive center, over your heart center, your compassion center, over your feeling center, that's your belly. And just notice for the next few soft, sweet breaths, how those 3 places are stacked and in line with one another. Patiently waiting for the body to find its way in this practice. We try not to force. The first principle in yoga is ahimsa. First, do no harm. I'm just patiently waiting for the body to let go of the things, the habits. We find a new picture and we just gently align with that last breath. And as you exhale, just let your hands float down into prayer and take a pause to make an offering for your practice today. And offer that with a bow. We'll come back up to sitting, we'll take a breath, and we'll seal that together with an Om. Noticing the results of that oming, that breathing, that alignment. Just take a pause to notice and then release. We're going to come right up to standing. So I'm hoping that you have a block. If you don't, a thick paper towel roll or a book might work. You're going to take that block and put it right up in your inner thighs. You could even take a rolled up blanket or a towel. And I'm just going to show you from the side because it's really important as we squeeze the block. We don't squeeze it forward. We squeeze it backwardly. Is that a word? Backwardly? And the knees are soft here. So they're never locked back, that they're nice and easy does it. But where we're not so easy does it for right now is we're squeezing to the midline. And there's a reason for that. So I want your inner thighs to really wake up. They may get a little bit achy, and that's okay. I want the inner thighs to wake up because we're working with our hips today. And as we work with our hips, there's a tendency sometimes to overstretch and open away from the midline. So we want to really get to know this hug because it will really help us in our hip practice. Take a couple more deep breaths. If you need to, look down at your feet and just notice that the outer edges are parallel to each other. Again, the knees are soft. There's that squeezing action as if we could slightly pull the block backwards. And then just notice how you rock on your feet. Are you on the whole foot? Are you towards the ball of the foot or towards the heel? And see if you can even that out. And then just close your eyes for a moment and find the stacking of throat over heart over belly. And then see if you can use that squeezing action to find a little more length in the spine. A couple more breaths here. Really going to imprint this block action. On your next inhale, I want you to fly your arms up overhead. You're going to grab your right wrist with your left hand, squeeze the block, and start to bow over to the side. And you're just going to imagine, even as you squeeze the block, that you could breathe open the spaces in your right rib, kind of like a leveler blind that you were trying to peek out of. Good, last breath. And then squeeze that block to bring you back up. And exhale, release the hands. And just roll the shoulders a couple times around. Let's try second side. So inhale, fly your arms up overhead, grab your left wrist with your right hand, and start to bow to the side, even as you squeeze the block. The knees stay soft, the feet stay centered, and then you imagine you're trying to peek out from that rib cage like they were blinds. And you just breathe into that space. If you take the opposite waistline, so your right waistline, and squeeze it a little bit, that will help the opening. And then you squeeze that block to come on up, and exhale, release the hands. Inhale, roll the shoulders. We're going to take that squeezy block and come towards the back of our mat. Inhale, fly your arms up overhead. As you squeeze the block, you're going to dive forward and the block's going to go back slightly. And here you touch the floor. So it's Uttanasana. And just take a moment to patiently adjust and feel where you are. Feel your transitional moment between standing tall and Uttanasana. Soften the knees and see if you can squeeze that block even here. It gets a little harder. And then squeeze that block and come up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Squeeze the block and bow Uttanasana, standing forward fold. Squeeze the block up to Ardha half Uttanasana, half forward fold. And exhale, squeeze the block to Uttanasana, forward fold. Bend the knees here deeply. You're going to drop the tail, pick up the belly, and roll yourself one vertebra at a time all the way up to standing. Squeeze the block slightly back. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive. Uttanasana. Inhale, squeeze that block towards the back. Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, Uttanasana. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, bend the knees like Utkatasana, but this time you're going to roll up. You're starting at the belly and you're just squeezing that block and rolling all the way up to standing. One more time, just like that. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive. Feel that steady breath. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, bow forward. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, bend your knees. Inhale, you can pause there. As you exhale, squeeze and start to roll up. Beautiful. Fly your arms. Inhale. Exhale, dive forward. We're going to shift it up a little bit. From here, you're just going to walk your hands a little bit forward, like a mini downward facing dog. And you can soften the knees and try to squeeze the block, but make sure your legs like pistons from the hips down, like you're trying to root those legs into earth. You'll get an extra special stretch. And then walk your hands, one hand print forward and begin again. So from your hips, root down like pistons down into that earth, like you're trying to make yourself super steady and strong. Squeeze the block and walk your hands forward. One hand step. And now you're going to inhale, squeeze the block and come up to tippy toes. And then exhale, squeeze the block and try to pull it towards the back wall. Inhale, tippy toes, lift up. Exhale, squeeze the block towards the back wall. Last one, inhale, squeeze the block, come up to tippy toes. Exhale, squeeze the block. Imagine you could pull those inner thighs back as the shoulders moved forward so that you feel that the mound of the big toe and the inner heel and the inner thighs are moving backwards, but your thumb mound and your pointer finger mound are moving forwards. Beautiful. You're gonna let that block kind of fall out, or you can help it fall out. You're going to take your feet nice and wide on the sticky mat, as wide as the sticky mat, and bend your knees and just fold forward. And now we're just going to rock left and right. So you're just going to bend one knee and then the other. And here's our first foray into our hips. And you just let yourself kind of sway and swing left and right, so that you get into those hip sockets a little bit. They're round. There's a lot of muscle action on the hips. They say there's about 17 different muscles that govern the way that our hips act and work and feel like they are a tight, bound up region of the body. So we're just working to open those up. Come back to center. Inhale, come up halfway. Exhale, bend your knees, place your elbows on your knees. And so now you're in a kind of like a squat, like an Uttanasana, but with the legs wide, and start to try to tear the mat apart with your feet, like you're trying to rip the mat in half, and see if that takes you down a little bit. Make sure that the belly is strong here. And as you go a little bit lower, as you go lower, the belly lifts up. One more breath. And then from here, walk back into downward facing dog. And you can bring your feet a little closer together here. Just make sure that the low back is not round. So you can bend the knees, you can lift the heels off the floor, and then feel that lumbar spine move in and up and the belly move to meet it. One more breath. And then gently walk your way up to the front of the mat, Uttanasana. You can take your block with you if you want, or just bend your knees enough to touch the floor. Inhale, halfway up, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, Utkatasana, bending the knees deeply. Here's where I really like to use those thumbs on the back. So what we talked about earlier. So just feel into those back muscles. If there's one that's a little bit tighter, it needs to draw in closer to the spine. So you try as best you can to figure out how you hug that in, and then press down and come up to standing. Release your hands. Bring them into prayer and take a pause and a cleansing breath. Beautiful. We're going to bring our blocks or chair or wall. We're going to do a little hip opening stretch here. So standing so that the blocks are something to hold on to is in front of you. You're going to take your left ankle over the right, and bend your knees and see if you can place your hands on blocks. If you don't have blocks, if you have a chair or a couch or a wall, that can work too. You're going to bring the right hand to the sole of the left foot and the other hand to the top of the shin if you can balance. If you can't, just do one of those things. And you're going to try to make that shin bone shorter. So you're going to squeeze in and remember the block. So you're going to squeeze around that block as best you can and try to pull the hips back behind you. One more breath. Beautiful. Reach down, come up to standing, take a cleansing breath. Those good, strong balancing poses really get right into the hips. So we go second side. So you drape that ankle over and find something to hold. Now just notice if when you do this, your hips want to really swing one side or the other. Try to keep them pretty square. And then one hand goes to the sole of the foot. That may be enough. You make sure it's a walking ankle. And if you can do both, you try to shorten and squeeze that bone. And then you remember that block that was between your thighs and you pull that back. Use your abdominals to lift in and up. One more breath. And release. Drop that foot down. Take a cleansing breath. We're going to do one more each side. Right away getting into those beautiful, broad, flowing hips. Here we go, first side. Left ankle comes on over. Find the pose that works for you. Whatever support that you need today. Hand on the foot and knee if that works for you to shorten that bone. Squeezing isometrically and then squeezing isometrically around the imaginary block. Wake up those inner thighs. This is super key for hip stability, lumbar and sacral stability, is having strong adductors. Those are your inner thighs. Good. Can you bend the standing leg just a little bit more and squeeze the block just a little bit more? And then press down and come up to standing and take a cleansing breath. Last time, second side. Taking that right leg over the left, finding your support system. Squeezing, shortening that bone, squeezing the inner thighs, bending the standing leg a little bit more if you can. Otherwise, you just get happy and patient with that really strong action to the midline. One more breath. Things will change, I promise. Press down and come up to standing. Bring yourself to the front of the mat. We'll begin right away into Surya Namaskar so that we can warm up. We'll be doing some longer holds towards the end of practice, but for right now, let's get some movement going. So hands in prayer, inhale deeply, lift the space of the heart. Exhale, release the hands, and notice these are the transitions. Inhale, so we move through them, feeling each part along the journey. Exhale, diving forward, Uttanasana, not just focusing on getting there, but about the movement in between, pressing halfway up, Ardha Uttanasana. Beautiful. Bend your knees, take your right leg back to a lunge. And that back knee can drop to the floor for now. You're just going to press down with both feet so that we uplift the hips a little bit. So they're not draping down and hanging on the joints. We press down and lift them up. Take another breath here and see if you could just bring a little awareness to those adductors, those inner thighs. From here, we begin to deepen our breath and rock forward and back until we breathe and exhale into standing forward fold, Uttanasana. Second side, pressing up, Ardha Uttanasana. Bend the knees, take the left leg back to a lunge. Fingertips can be on blocks or a floor, or they could even be on a chair if that's a little bit much for your body. Either way, you're pressing down through your feet to uplift those hips a little bit, and you're seeing if you can bring more awareness to your adductors here, those inner thighs. You take another breath. As you breathe out, you're going to step down onto your hands and take your right leg back to plank pose. Now, right away, we're going to go into a little variation of side plank. So turn your right hand out to 1 o'clock and go onto the knife edge of your right foot. And I want you to feel it. So you don't have to do anything else. You just feel that knife edge of the foot and imprint it. If you want to take your left hand up to sky, you can. Good. And then bring that on down. Turn your left hand out to like 11 o'clock and come onto the knife edge of your left foot. And I want you to just feel that knife edge. This is super important. It'll be important later. Inhale, and if you want to, open your right arm to the sky. It's important now and later. Come on back. You're going to just push right into downward facing dog. Take a cleansing breath there. And see if you can pause in your dog without fidgeting. The gaze here is down towards the floor. That's why it's called downward facing dog pose. So see if you can look at a place that's just right underneath your face. And take another breath here. There's your drishti, looking strongly at the mat, at what's in front of you. Take another breath. Good, and then we inhale to tippy toes and just going to walk our way to the front of the mat, Uttanasana, standing forward fold. Inhale, pushing to Ardha Uttanasana, transitioning to Utkatasana. It's like moving through, you know, butter, peanut butter. Inhale, up to Tadasana. Everything has its time. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive Uttanasana. Pressing up, transitioning to Ardha Uttanasana. Bend your knees, take your left leg back to a bent knee lunge. Come up onto your front knee with your hands. And take a moment to press through both feet to uplift your hips. And the hands press down and forward to bring in your core. Let the hands drape down by your sides. Press through your feet, legs and feet, and bring your heart up to the sky. If you'd like to add a little flying of the arms, you may. Exhale, release, rock it forward and back to Uttanasana. Transitioning from one pose to the other. Exhale, Drishti is down by your big toes. Inhale, pushing up halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, bend knees, right leg back to a bent knee lunge. Walking up onto that front knee. Feet both press down to lift the hips up slightly. There's a little rebound lift there. The hands drape down by the sides as we breathe steadily. Inhale and exhale. Use the strong legs to lift the heart up. If it feels good to you on the next inhale, fly. Exhale, push on back to plank pose. Come, take your right hand to 2 o'clock. Come to the knife edge of your right foot. Step your left foot across so it looks like a kickstand. You're stepping that left foot towards the left hand. Then you knife edge, you push on that knife edge to lift the hips as high as you can. And you inhale, open the left arm to the sky. Beautiful, get into those hips. Good, come on down. Turn that left hand out to 11 o'clock. Come to the knife edge of your left foot. Step your right foot across towards your right hand like a kickstand. Press down on that knife edge and lift the hips up to the sky. Can you feel like you get a little more inner thigh squeeze there? And then open your right arm to the sky. Beautiful. Release that. Come on down. Bring your knees to the floor. Bring your forearms to the floor. Take a pause there. And then just step back into forearm plank. Belly lifts high up away from the floor. I'm going to have you take your hands and make knife edges on the pinky side of your finger or your hands. And you're pushing down and forward to uplift your core. This becomes core work. One more breath. And then release your hips to the floor and take your forehead to the floor. And rock your body left and right just for a little massage there. And breathe. There's that steady, beautiful breath. You remember that we started with breathing into the ribs to inflate them. And a long exhale. All right, come to stillness. And sneak your hands out in front of you like Superwoman pose. Let your forehead rest on the mat. And just feel here for a moment the lack of fidgeting, the stillness. The eyes move into the third eye point. And you just find this nice long central channel of attention and energy. Beautiful. From here, we bring the hands back so that they're resting underneath the forehead. You tuck your toes. You press down through knees, feet, and hands, and you lift your hips up off the floor. So it looks like a back bend, and you can walk yourself into it kind of slowly if you need to, and increase it over time. And you breathe in your abdominals, and you arch that spine. One more breath. And then release that. Bring your hands up to Sphinx and just look over at your left foot and over at your right foot and just do a couple of those side to side movements to get a little bit into those outer hips. Beautiful. And then from here, we push up to forearm plank. And then from there, we walk our feet up so that we're in dolphin. And then we drop the knees to the floor, take them wide, sit on back, child's pose. Balasana. And in this, because it's a hip practice, let's swing left and right. Just gently get into those hip joints. And then come back to center. Walk your hands to the right so that your spine mirrors the thigh bone. Walk the left hand forward a little bit so you get a little bit longer there. And then squeeze the left waistline to the bone. And then walk yourself to the center and over to the left till your spine mirrors your thigh there. Walk your right hand forward and squeeze your right waistline to the bone. And then come on back to center. Inhale up to tabletop. Take your left arm out in front of you for bird dog pose and your right leg behind you. And you're just going to work your core here. So you're going to press your standing hand down to bring your abdominals up. And then you stretch from the left heel to the right fingertips. The drishti is straight down. See the mat, see the color, see the texture. One last breath. And release. Take a cleansing breath as you inhale to cow. Exhale to cat. Second side, bird dog. Right hand goes straight out. Left leg goes straight back. Standing hand presses down to bring the abdominals onto the spine. Stretch from the heel to the fingers. The drishti is straight down at the floor. Really appreciate the mat color, what you can see, where you are in space. One more breath. And release that down. Toes are tucked under. Inhale to cow. Exhale to cat. From here, press on back to downward facing dog. Big deep breath in. Big deep breath out. There's your steady breathing. Your drishti is straight down to the floor. And we're going to transition to Uttanasana, standing forward fold. So I want you to come up to tippy toes and walk your way very slowly. Take your time so you feel this transition. You really inhabit the actions that you're doing. And then standing forward fold. Inhale halfway up, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale Utkatasana, hands to the hips. Use those thumbs to inhale and bring those waistlines close to the spine. Inhale to standing, Tadasana. Exhale, release your hands. Inhale, take your arms straight out to the side. Exhale, bring the right elbow over the left. Inhale, bring the elbows up. Exhale, elbows touch into your sternum. Inhale, bring the elbows up. Exhale, elbows touch into your belly button. Inhale, elbows up. Exhale, elbows touch your knees. Inhale, elbows up. Beautiful. Release. You can just let your hands float out to the side for second side. Bringing the left elbow over to the top. Wrap. Inhale, lift. Exhale to sternum. Inhale, lift. Exhale to belly button. Bent knees. Inhale, press to standing. Exhale to knees. Inhale, come up to standing. Unravel your hands. Tadasana, hands down by the sides. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive. Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway up, Ardha Uttanasana. Bend your knees, take your right leg back to a straight leg lunge. Walk your hands up onto your front knee. Press your hands down to uplift the hips. Beautiful. Let the hands drape down by your sides. Press through those strong piston-like legs to lift the heart. Don't let the hips come forward with you. They need to draw back. And there's that little squeezing of that block. And then you inhale and bring the arms up overhead. Beautiful. Release them on down. Rock it forward and back. Uttanasana. Standing forward fold. Second side. Inhaling to Ardha. Exhaling, knees bent. Take your left leg back, straight leg lunge. Walk up the hands onto that front knee. You press both legs down to lift the hips back and apart so they don't tuck under. They're working back to make a nice little soft back bend here. The hands press forward to bring the abdominals onto the spine, and then you drape them. And you press with those legs to lift up the heart. Fly with your arms. Exhale, release it on down. Find your plank. Take your right hand to 2 o'clock. Find the knife edge of your right foot. Now you have choices here. You can place your left foot on the floor in front of the right. You can take it across the body in a kickstand, or you can stack it. Either way, feel the knife edge of your right foot and press the hips up to the sky. Open the left arm. Beautiful. Take it overhead. Inhale, release. Exhale, arrive. Second side. Left hand at 11 o'clock. Knife edge of the left foot. Yogi's choice. Stack, step across. Open up the right arm. Push down with that knife edge. Lift up the hips. Take the right arm up overhead. Beautiful. Bring it on back down to plank. Drop your knees to the floor. Drop your forearms to the floor. Stretch your legs towards straight for dolphin. It looks like downward facing dog on forearms. And then walk yourself forward. Let your head hang. Drishti is looking back at your big toes. Beautiful. Drop your knees to the floor. Transitions. Sit on back. And let your hands rest in your lap. Take a cleansing breath. So here's a little shift that I'm trying this week. So play with me. You're going to rock out onto your right hip. You'll notice that your right knee is pointed towards the short edge of the mat. I want you to keep it like that. But you're going to take the left leg behind you slightly. And then if you can, you swing your left foot forward until the shin is parallel to the front of the mat. So it looks like we're moving into pigeon, but we're kind of not. It's a little variation on pigeon, because I find that most of us really struggle with finding our way in pigeon. I want you to turn your spine so that it mirrors the thigh bone. And then you just plant your hands. Maybe you want to put your elbows on blocks, or maybe you just turn, maybe your elbows are straight. But you're just going to have your spine so that the inner thighs squeeze slightly. There's our block action. And we feel the spinal muscles come close to the spine to lengthen us out in this pose. And you might find that you get a sweet little stretch in that left front of the hip, but it's a little intro to pigeon. And you just keep the abdominals squeezing around the midline. And if the hands push down and forward, the abdominals will pull back. Last breath. Find that steady, sweet breath. And then just release that by grabbing your left ankle, pulling it in tight, and then rolling back onto Vajrasana. And then just take a moment there and just notice what you notice. See if there's a different feeling left and right. And just getting into those outer hip flexors a little bit. You're going to roll onto your left hip. Notice that your left knee is pointing mostly to the front of the mat. Keep it there. Take your right leg behind you so it's fairly comfortable. You might look a little bit like figure four, like a swastika almost, as you bring your right ankle forward. Yeah, in fact, there's a pose in yoga called swastikasana because it takes in that same, and I think that was I forget what that word means, but it was actually taken from Sanskrit, that word. But you're going to take your spine and mirror your thigh as best you can. And just play around with that. Take your time. Be patient to feel what that feels like. And if anything's too much, you just slightly back out of it. But see if you can bring the inner thighs close to the midline, as well as the muscles around the spine hugging in. And then your elbows can be straight or they can soften down, and you just breathe, and you're going to get into that outer left hip a little bit. Yeah, feel it. One more breath. And then you just push yourself up to sitting. You swing that foot back in and under you, and then you can just come on back to Vajrasana and take a cleansing breath. From here, we'll move into cow tilt, cat tilt, and dog pose. So tucking toes, inhale, tabletop cow. Exhale to cat. And then move into your downward facing dog. Inner thighs squeeze and pull those inner feet back as your inner arms move forward. Last breath, feel the stillness, try not to fidget. Feel the solidity of the floor underneath you. Find your drishti, straight down, downward facing, Adho Mukha. Mukha is face. Adho Mukha is downward facing, dog pose. Good. From here, bring your feet together so they're touching. Inhale, fly your right leg to the sky. And then you can turn it outwardly. So you're stacking your right hip right on top of your left one. Try not to collapse in your left arm, but push down with those 3 points that are on the floor and keep trying to stack right hip over left hip. And then bend the knee and just appreciate that stacking. Don't try to let the hip fall back, but just stack and open. And then inhale, square off those hips. Keep that right foot to the sky, and then bring it slowly down and pause, feeling patiently into the pause and the transition and the stillness. And then we inhale, left leg up to the sky. Feeling you've got 3 points on the floor. Press into those to let the hips get a little more rebound lifted. Stack your left hip over your right hip. And keep working to feel into that without letting your right arm collapse. Good. Keeping that. Bend the left foot, left knee, but try to keep the stacking action. So you're going to want to collapse into that left hip. Don't let it happen. Keep stacking it over the right. And then square off the hips. Keep the leg to the sky and then down. And from there, just drop your knees to the floor. Sit on back, Vajrasana. Take a cleansing breath. And from here, we'll interlace our fingers and just gently roll. That was a lot of wrist work. So let's gently roll those wrists around. Go the other direction. Clasp the hands, adhere the forearms, and take the wrists around from here. Go the other direction. Here's the last one. I just learned this one recently, and I really appreciate how it feels. It's like taking, it looks like maybe you're begging, like, but you're trying to touch your fingertips to your own wrist. So like you're trying to take your own pulse and just squeeze into those muscles, really wake up those wrists and get them strong in this direction. One more breath, squeezing and gently releasing, and then just shaking, rolling, flapping your hands out. Here we go to tabletop, tuck toes to inhaling to cow, exhaling to cat, downward facing dog. Walk your way to the front of the mat, Uttanasana. Ardha Uttanasana, inhaling. Exhaling, Utkatasana. Hands, thumbs to the low spine. Move it in and up, abdominal strong. Inhale, transition to standing. Slow it down. Exhale, release. Moving at this different speed is so good for us. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive, Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway up, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, bend the right leg. Take the right leg. I'm sorry, I think it's the other one. Bend the knees, take the left leg back to a lunge. Walk your hands up to that top knee. You're gonna pause and push down with your feet to let the hips rise up a little bit, and think of that lumbar curve. Think of the sitting bones as yearning towards your heels. The hands press down and forward to bring in the abdominals, and then you let them hang as you press your heart up. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive. Come on down to your plank pose. Turn your right hand out to 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock. Turn your knife edge of the foot and stack it. Maybe that's all you do. Press that knife edge down and lift your hips up. If it feels good to you, open your left arm to the sky. Exhale, release it down. Come onto your left hand. Find your transitions. Move carefully and slowly. Stack knife edge of the left foot. Step across or stack. If you want to, open right arm. Beautiful. Come on down. Come right away onto your forearms and walk up to dolphin. So forearm, you're on your forearms. You're walking like a downward facing dog and your eyes are looking back at your big toes. Take a breath. Lift your sitting bones to sky. Drishti, look straight back. Come on to tippy toes. Exhale, drop your knees to the floor. Take your knees as wide as the sticky mat, big toes touching, and move down into child's pose. Don't forget that this is a hip stretch. So with hip stretches, we want that gentle squeezing of the thigh block. Those inner thighs should wake up and hug around the spine to support it. One more breath. Inhale to tabletop. Tuck toes under, cow tilt. Dog or cat tilt. Downward facing dog. Find the stillness. Listen to your breath. Last breath. Inhale to tippy toes. Walk your way up to the front of the mat, Uttanasana. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana, transitions, Utkatasana. Take your time. Feel into the movements. Really, what's the word? Come into your body, into this moment in time. Press down, come up to standing. Release your hands. Bring them into prayer and take a pause here. Find that breath, that beautiful 4 count, maybe a little bit of a hold and then a long exhale. One more just like that. As you exhale, release your hands. Inhale, fly. Exhale, dive, Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway up, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, bend your knees and take your right leg back to a lunge. This time you're going to anchor the back heel. So now that back foot is square to the back of the mat, but you're not on the knife edge. You're on the whole foot. So take a moment to feel into that foot to get really present. You can bring your left elbow onto your left knee and then just let your drishti just gaze with you as you start to come up. And then you're going to take your right hand to your right hip. Pause there for a moment. Easy gaze. Fly your right arm up overhead. Utthita Parshvottanasana. One more breath. Think of your abdominals engaging and you're stretching out through your fingers and your toes. Beautiful. From here, you're going to press down through both feet and come up to warrior two. And in warrior two, go ahead and straighten that front leg for a moment and look at that front knee. As you exhale and transition back to warrior two, I want you to go slowly, and I want you to track that knee right over second toe. You're going to keep that. As you inhale, you come back up to straight leg. And just let this be a little bit of a study here as you bend, like you're moving through thick air, and straighten. And really get to know how that knee moves right over the second and third toe. But I don't want you to lose your conscious awareness of your back foot, so that you're finding that whole body awareness. We've got one more. We're going to finish up in a bent knee pose, warrior two. And just breathe here for a few more moments, seeing if you can find stillness in a pose that can be a little bit challenging. Beautiful. From here, we reach forward and back to goddess warrior, squeezing the right waistline to stretch the left. The left knee still stays over the second and third toes. And then we press down to straighten that leg. The left hand drapes onto the left leg and comes down just right below the knee, so that we can pause for a moment, unlock the knee. Here's a good transition where we pause in our lives and to make sure we're being careful and we're aligned with our values. And then you let the hand just keep draping down towards the ankle, and we pause again, making sure that the feet are square on the mat, the knees are soft, the belly is uplifted. If it works for you, from here, open the right arm to the sky, triangle. And you can also be on the floor if you're a little more flexible, or on a block. So just make it work for you. Your drishti eventually looks up at the top hand, but that doesn't work for everybody's neck. So let your drishti be where it feels comfortable for you, where you can relax patiently into the pose. One more breath. Beautiful. Going to release that right hand from the sky. Come on back and drop the right knee to the floor. So listen carefully, a little bit tricky. You're going to roll out onto the right hip. And now you're going to turn to the left. So it looks a little bit like our side plank, but you're on your side. And you might feel a nice strong stretch through the IT band on the right leg. And you just breathe here. One more breath. Beautiful. Feel the stretch in your outer hip and come on back to center. Realign that front foot so it's pointing towards the short edge of the mat, and then start to rock forward and back. Uttanasana, standing forward fold. Inhale halfway up, Ardha Uttanasana. Bend your knees, take your left leg back to a straight leg lunge. Walk up onto your front knee and just feel into that pose, pressing down to lift the hips. You feel the sitting bones trying to move towards your heels. The hands press down and forward to bring in the abdominals, and then you inhale, fly. Exhale, release. Come all the way down. You're going to anchor your back heel and walk your right elbow to your right knee. Beautiful. From here, feel both feet in the floor. They push down, you open your top arm to the sky. From there, you inhale and lengthen that arm up overhead and feel that stretch through the whole left side of your body. One more breath. Abdominals are active. Hips are opening. Look down at the floor. Push down. Slowly move through that transition to standing to warrior two. Bending the front knee right over the second and third toes. Inhaling, stretching that leg straight. Exhale, making sure it slowly bends over the second and third toes. Keep going. Inhaling and exhaling. And as you do this, I want you to notice that the back foot is still engaged. the whole foot, not the knife edge, but that whole foot is feeling the floor and it's participating in the pose. We've got one more. Inhaling and exhaling. We'll stay here and see if you can find stillness. Your drishti here is over your front fingers. And the eyes, remember, they don't bug out, but they softly draw back. And we find that steady gaze. Last breath. Inhale, reach forward, and exhale, reach back, goddess warrior. Make sure that right knee stays over the second and third toes. Press down, come up to straight legs. The right hand sneaks on down to right underneath the knee to make sure that that knee is slightly soft. It's not hyperextended. And we just pause and feel into that. Sometimes that can cause a little bit of hip stretch just by its nature. And then you let that hand just drape down until it gets to the ankle or wherever. Maybe for you, you're a little more flexible and you can place it on the floor or a block. The left hand opens up to a T. We pause to reconsider abdominals. The hips are stacking one in line with the other. One more breath. The drishti, ideally, and I don't mean that as a, let's see, as a command or anything. It's just that the drishti classically is looking up, but that can hurt people's necks. So let your drishti be where your drishti is. Beautiful. You're going to come on back down into a lunge, lifting your back heel. You're going to listen carefully because you're going to drop your right leg to the floor. Your left leg to the floor. And you're going to roll out onto your outer left hip as you turn to the right. So you get almost looks like a kickstanded pose. And you're getting a stretch through that outer left hip and IT band. And you just breathe there. Now you have that knife edge more on the mat. That's going to serve you later. One more breath. And gently release. You'll go ahead and swing that right leg back to meet your left and sit back in Vajrasana. Take a cleansing breath and let all the goodness of your practice so far bring you into stillness. Beautiful. I'm always love how my yoga practice brings me into this internal place where I can still hear what's going around me, but I'm not quite so invested in it. I've become a little more invested in this self-care practice. So we're going to move towards a modified pigeon again. So you're going to rock out onto your outer right hip. I actually need to move up my mat a little bit so that your right knee is pointed towards the short edge of the mat. Your left leg comes back to where it's pretty comfortable. And then you swing your right foot up. So now I've got my shin is parallel to the front edge of the mat. Instead of trying to go right into pigeon here, I just twist a little bit until my spine is in line with my front thigh. And I find my inner thighs and I squeeze and I lengthen spine. If it feels good to me, I can start coming on to my forearms. If it doesn't, I stay where I am. And I just squeeze and think of my spine as extending straight up through the center line of the body. And I might notice I get a little stretch on that outer hip. If it feels good, I might come down a little farther. But never just collapsing, always pressing into the floor to bring up the abdominals, to find the length through the spine. And a couple more breaths. All right, this time you're going to walk towards the center, but now you're going to rock a little bit and try to bring that left leg underneath you, looking more like pigeon. If you feel any pain or discomfort in your knee, you want to bring the foot closer to your groin. Otherwise, here's where the knife edge comes into play. If you press the knife edge of your right foot into the mat, it'll help you. And if you take your left hand and just kind of rub into the sole of the foot, that will help you too. I think that the sole of the foot and the hip are intimately connected. So now take your fingers onto the mound of the big toe. As you knife edge, push the mound of the big toe towards your fingers and see if you can start to square your hips a little bit. Don't worry how low they get to the mat. You'll feel a different stretch in that outer hip. Last breath. And then release that. Woo! That worked us towards pigeon. Bring your knees together. Rock onto your knees for Vajrasana. And just take a moment to feel into the different shapes and colors and textures of your right and left side. Feel that beautiful, steady breath, even though things get tough. Some people just really hate pigeon. So it's nice to kind of explore it by coming into it gradually from a little obtuse angle. Let's go ahead and roll over onto our left hip. So our left knee is pointing to the short edge of the mat. The right leg comes behind us. Now this might be where you finish. This might be enough for you. Otherwise, you swing your left foot forward till that shin is parallel to the short edge of the mat. And then you take your spine in line with your thigh and you just move forward. And you're squeezing those inner thighs towards each other to create that little sandwiching effect around the spine that keeps it protected. And you just breathe. And here's where the knife edge of the foot starts to become important. So it presses down. Can you feel that difference? Like, let it be soft and relaxed and notice what you feel. And then karate chop it or knife edge it into the floor and see what you feel. I think it really picks up the muscular action which keeps you safe when you karate chop or knife edge that foot down. And if it feels good to you, you can walk your arms forward. If not, just stay where you're comfortable. First, do no harm. Squeeze around that spine with strong muscular action. Lengthen through the crown. And then you come up a little bit. And this time, you're going to rock a little bit more so that the right leg starts to turn under. So now I've got my toes tucked under and my hips are a little bit more square. And my hands here, I can be on my hands. They can be right by my knee and my foot. I can take my fist of my right hand and rub it into the sole of the right foot. And I can take the fingers and press into the mound of the big toe. And as I karate chop that foot down, I press the mound of the big toe into the fingers. Usually that really helps. And there's your pigeon. And again, you find those inner thighs and you squeeze them together to uplift the spine. Take a cleansing breath. Beautiful. And release out of that. Swing the back leg around and take Dandasana, a very simple pose with your legs out in front of you, hands by your sides, and you just straighten your arms and lengthen here. Feel the sitting bones, see if you can release them into earth. The drishti can be at your big toes. And you breathe. If it feels good and doable to you, you inhale your arms up overhead. A couple more breaths. Now remember your block, but this time the block is as long as your legs and it's from your ankles all the way to your inner thighs. Start to squeeze that block and see if you can reach forward towards your shins, your ankles, or your big toes. First, do no harm. We're not trying to get anywhere. We're just feeling that first stretch of hamstrings. So you squeeze around that imaginary block to find the spine lengthening. You're not trying to round here and tuck your chin in. You're trying to keep your throat in line with your heart and your belly. And you're using the strength of the legs to press the spine long. And you just breathe here. Trying not to fidget, just sending that breath up through the long spine. Got a couple more breaths. Paschimottanasana, stretch for the west side of the body. Last breath, big, long, full. Beautiful. And release on back. The opposite pose, or the balancing pose of Paschimottanasana, is Purvottanasana, which looks like this. The fingertips look up, point towards your booty. You can either do it with straight legs. I find that quite difficult, or you can do it with bent legs. So we'll start with bent, and then if you want to try straight, you can. So you're going to press into your feet and hands and lift up your hips. If you want to try for straight, do one at a time. Stretch one leg out and press down and see if you can lift your heart. And then switch and try the other side. Beautiful. Press down and lift your heart. If you want to try both, you can try that, or you can come back to bent leg. Last breath. Oh, and release it on down. And take a cleansing breath. Beautiful. For our last hip stretch, we're going to swing the legs around, come onto our hands and knees, and take our right leg, tuck it in behind our left. So the knees are together, but the feet now go wide apart. So it looks like a reverse child's pose. I'm going to walk my hands forward onto fingertips and start to bring the left and the right hip back equally. And I just keep going, and maybe I walk my fingertips towards me again as I stretch back, and I just try to get into those outer hips. Couple more breaths. Beautiful. And then rock forward onto your hands and knees and switch sides. So bring that left one out from underneath you. Place it on the ground. Tuck your right one behind. Feet wide and apart. Walk your hands forward to like downward facing dog on fingertips. And then bring the left and right hips straight back. Find that inner thigh squeeze and see if that helps you here. Breathe. Find your drishti straight down to the floor. Eyes are soft but steady. Breath is smooth and long. Beautiful. Come on up. Come onto your knees. Vajrasana, sit on back. Hands in your lap, cleansing breath. Here's the pose where I would recommend the chair if you're super, super tight in your legs. We're gonna do stack fire log pose, and I highly recommend this on a folded blanket as well. Just depending, if you're super open in the hips, you might not need either of those things. I'll just show you what it could look like. Maybe I should show you from the side. If you don't have a chair, you could use blocks or nothing, but you're going to bring your seat onto the edge of the folded blanket. My left leg is in like pigeon. So that means that the shin is parallel to the short edge of the mat. And the right leg is like pigeon, but it's stacked on top. So it's reminiscent of the very first standing pose we did where we stretched our hips. From here, I like to press down, lift up my hips, and try to drag them back a little bit isometrically. Now, if this hurts your knees, you want to use props. So if either knee hurts, you want to bring a prop underneath the knee so that it's supported. And here's where a chair or a table or a piano bench or something is really nice. You just bring your forehead onto the chair, or your stacked forearms onto the chair, and you rest your head. And then the feet, they make karate chop, knife edge action. And that brings proper action up into the inner thighs, and you just breathe. And you wait. The hips will open. And somebody once told me, if you breathe right into the pain, you'll bring your attention there. So breathe around it. Breathe as if you're trying to surround the pain with softness and breath. The name of this pose is Agnistambasana, stacked fire log pose. One more breath. Beautiful. Come on back. You're going to take the right foot that's on top and stand on it in front of the left shin. You can draw the left shin a little bit closer to you, and then the right foot a little closer to you. So I got one knee up and one knee tucked under. I'm going to wrap my left arm around the right knee, and I'm going to twist, looking over at my right shoulder. And I'm going to use that same idea of inner thigh squeeze to make the tube of toothpaste that's my spine longer. And I'm going to actually try to squeeze a little toothpaste out from my crown. One more breath. And gently release. Hips and twists go really nicely together to give us a lot of freedom in our back. So we're going to switch that one. So now the right leg goes like pigeon. So the shin is parallel to the front of the mat. And the left leg stacks on top of that like pigeon. Some people call this double pigeon. I like the name Agnistambasana for some reason, so I like to call it stacked fire log pose. But you're going to bring those hips back either by just grabbing the sitting bones and bringing them back, or by pressing down through hands or knuckles and swinging the hips back a little bit. Beautiful. From there, if you have a chair or a bench or something that you can stack your forearms on and rest your forehead on, you won't focus so much on bowing forward. So many of us, we want to get forward, 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 but I think the hips have a bigger stretch to do first before you get there. So you're going to find those inner thighs and try to squeeze them back and up as if to lengthen the spine. If knees hurt at all, you want to make sure they've got blocks underneath them or something supporting them. And by the way, if this doesn't work for you at all, just take your ankles crossed out in front of you and just bow forward. That usually feels pretty safe for the knees. Okay. To come out of it, you're going to take that right leg off of the top of the thigh and place it right in front of the shin. The left leg can come closer to you, and then the right leg again. Oops, I did that wrong. The other way. So now you're standing on the left foot and the right leg is tucked under. You're going to take your right arm up to the sky and then wrap it over your left knee and turn and twist. Think of yourself like a tube of toothpaste, where it's always better to squeeze from the bottom. My personal preference. Imagine that you can literally squeeze a little dollop out through the crown. One more breath. And gently release. I think you've earned Shavasana. So if you have anything on your mat, like a chair or props, you can take them off to the side. You could also take a blanket here and roll it up into a burrito roll and place your knees over top that as you lie down. To take our final resting pose, to let all the learning, all the challenge into the body-mind constellation here. And you let go of what you think should be. And you compassionately lie into what is. I think compassion and patience really go together, right? It takes a lot of courage and faith and compassion to be patient. And I'm not saying that's the only way. There's nothing like a good fiery personality to make big changes. But here's the balance to that. So we want to make sure we have access to both. Feel the corners of your body on your mat. Let them go. Let yourself rest deeply. You can always stay here as long as you want. We've got quite a few more minutes to just rest here. See if you can not fidget, but you can really, truly rest. Continually bring your gaze inward. Let even your ears listen inwardly. This is your time to self-study, to bring in patient awareness, to feel the gaze now that's more inward, and the breath that's softer, and the stillness that's more present. Deepen your breath. Remember that impermanence governs all things. Nothing stays the same forever. Even our yoga practice comes to an end. So begin to wiggle your fingers and toes and breathe more deeply. Let that breath take you into gentle stretching and moving. As you're ready with a big stretch, you roll to your right side. And then from there, just take a moment to remember the transition from down to up. You just take your time coming up to sitting. As you're ready, you bring your hands into prayer. We're actually going to be here in stillness for a minute. So when you find your seat and you feel your hands touching, let your eyes migrate back to that third eye point. Find the stillness of your practice. Feel the breath smooth and steady. Opening the hips really brings us into a better seat for meditation. So if that's something you would love to do, this could be a good time for you. To complete our practice, we give thanks for ourselves, for our bodies, for our ability to come to the practice. We give thanks for this space and this time in our lives. We give thanks for each other and our teachers. And we send some of what we gained out into the world where we think it's needed. And we seal that with a breath and an Om together. Inhaling. The divine within me honors the divine within you. Namaste. I will unmute you if you have any questions or thoughts. Otherwise, I will see you. There's some of you that muted yourselves, so I can't hear you unless you unmute you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. That was good.
Have a great Monday.
Thank you for the gift.
You bet. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. How'd you do, Fenna?
It was a good experience.
Great. Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet.
Gay came to my contact improv dance class.
Oh, cool. I love it. That's amazing.
Cynthia's a dancer too.
Oh.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
taught
Contact improv.
dance to the criminally insane.
That too.
Gay has a good memory, Cynthia.
Oh, she's amazing. She's amazing. Yeah. Good. Where are you coming from, Fenna? Where are we seeing you from?
I live in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, wow. The other side of the country. Amazing.
Yes, where it's still snowing.
Is it really?
Yes.
What? That's crazy. Is that unusual in May?
It doesn't happen every year, but it's not unheard of.
Yeah. Wow, that's cold.
In
Yes,
contrast to Gay showing me all of her flowers.
Yeah.
Yep. California.
Well, Finna, I just want to make it possible for you to come back if you want to.
Uh-huh.
And is she in now?
Yes. So now I know her name. So if she comes back, I got her.
Okay, and I'll send you her email address so you can send her the statements.
Sounds great.
I mean the
Yeah.
notices. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you.
Well, I really like today.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
How are your hips?
The beginning was awesome.
Good. Yay.
Well, I like the whole day.
Great. Perfect.
And I now have my tablet. Can you see it?
Yep.
My tablet on the floor.
Oh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
So when I'm down on the floor, I can see you.
Nice. Bye, Susie.
But
That's great, Gay. That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much.
You bet. See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's see. How do I do?